We've got to protect our children. They need our hands. We've got to stand up. Yeah, stand.
Hello, my friends. Ian Mitchell here. I hope you're having a great start to your 2026. This is the second episode on our focus on protect our children. And I have to tell you, I'm so unbelievably excited because I've got my friend that I've known for quite a few years, Doug Gilmer, on. Doug is a former Homeland Security law enforcement agent that has spent decades focused on crimes of exploitation. It's unbelievable. He's an amazing person. He joined us from a remote location while he's getting ready to do a keynote, but it was such an amazing time with him. But I need to warn you, we are going to get into some really tough content. And it's really important. If you have little ears around you, I definitely advise headphones, earbuds, or waiting to watch this when you're alone, because we do get into some tough subject matter, and there's some words there that probably I wouldn't normally have on kind of the show. But this is important. This is important for you to hear. And so towards the end, he gets into a story, and I was really glad he shared this. It was about an encounter he had recently with a leader, and this exploitation topic. It really is worth staying on and listening. And then at the end, he gives some really meaningful advice to parents and guardians on what we can do to protect our homes, and it starts in the home. So, without further ado, let's get in and let's meet Doug Gilmer, again, a friend of mine. The reason we're doing this is I believe in our core, we have to protect our children. And so this is the second episode. Mr. Gilmer, thank you so much, my friend, for being okay with doing this. This is like I told you, is a series I'm super excited about because I can't think of a more important group to protect than children. And you have such
Absolutely.
a unique background. And so why don't we just start off by just telling those that are watching, a little bit about yourself and your unique background past.
Yeah. So I spent a little over 35 years in law enforcement. Started state and local law enforcement, went to the federal government, spent my last 25 years in federal law enforcement. I retired August 31st of 2024 from the Department of Homeland Security Investigations, where I was a supervisory special agent. Actually, my last role with DHS, I served as the senior law enforcement advisor at what's called the DHS Center for Countering Human Trafficking. So a lot of my career was spent working kind of what I call exploitative crime, right? Where typically vulnerable people were being exploited for various things, whether it was sex or through labor exploitation or labor trafficking or child sexual abuse, those types of things. That's really where my heart was at, was to serve vulnerable people. And it's personal for me too, because I was a victim of child sexual abuse. And so that, I think at some level also kind of played into my desire, as an adult when I got into law enforcement, to want to protect others.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry about that. And I would tell you, Doug, we got to meet when you were leading the office in Birmingham, and then
Hmm.
you moved on to CCHT, and you clearly were one of the most passionate members of federal law enforcement that I had a chance to kind of work with. I know we did some projects around some of the kind of national games and the World Games and the Super Bowl and all those,
Super
and you
Bowl and
were Super Bowl. Yeah, you were absolutely one of clearly differentiated yourself as just passion to get involved in the fight. So thank you for your partnership with, of course, the Noble, the nonprofit, but just inspiration as a person. You're a great human being. So you've done a lot of work talking and speaking into people, encouraging people across the entire industry. You are also the winner of the William Wilberforce Awards, and you get recognized quite a bit for the work you've done. So I just want to, for the audience's sake, just let you know that Doug is a very humble man, and he's done a lot and accomplished a lot and inspires. He's on the road this week, and he's about to do a keynote, and he's decided to fit this conversation in. So thank you, my friend. I truly appreciate you doing this. Um,
absolutely.
So let's talk about exploitative crime. Again, I don't want to talk about it in a way that creates fear, and I know we've got to kind of manage that because it's very serious. But when we talk about children or younger aged adults, what's the lens that you've seen in your law enforcement career and you see now?
The bottom line is, well, there's a couple of things. Um, Predators target vulnerable people, whether they are adults or kids, right? And all of us, whether we're adults or children, we all have vulnerabilities. Every one of us. It's just that for some, we do a better job of managing those vulnerabilities, right? But especially with children, they haven't matured, they haven't developed to the point probably that emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever, to help them do that. And so that keeps them in a vulnerable state longer. Those vulnerabilities can be a lot of different things. I mean, it can be substance abuse, it can be broken family relationships, it can be self-esteem, and we see that a lot in kids, especially who are just they have low self-esteem, or they're craving for attention. They're craving for love or affection from somebody because they're not getting it at home. They're missing something. And what I'll tell you, Ian, is, and I've and I'm also a researcher, um, and I've done a lot of work um, on kind of the history, specifically on human trafficking, but the history of human trafficking in the United States post Civil War, and have been able to collect a lot of original documents, and first edition books that were written on this issue from the late 1800s, early 1900s. This is not a new issue, right? I mean, we have formally used the term human trafficking or trafficking in persons in the U.S. since 1921. Informally, before that. But there are books that were written by professionals of that time, dealing with human trafficking and the sexual exploitation, primarily of young girls, and the vulnerabilities that existed then are the exact same vulnerabilities today. The tactics that predators used 125 years ago are the exact same tactics that predators use today to groom people into exploitation. The only thing that's changed is the advent of technology and the fact that now predators can kind of hide behind anonymity online. But the fact that so many people, adults and kids, have access to digital technology. Everybody's got a phone, a laptop, an iPad, and that's really kind of becoming the medium through which predators are going after kids. It's not, and even adults. It's not white vans. Um, we've. I think the last statistic that I saw was that less than 0.5%. So less than 0.5% of individuals who are kidnapped in the United States, children who are kidnapped in the United States, end up being trafficked. That's not to say that kidnappings don't happen, but trafficking is not the motivation for people who do that, right? So I'm not discounting the fact that there aren't evil people in the world that do that, but we often get focused on the wrong things. And the white van syndrome is just one of those things that we get focused on. And I tell parents all the time that there are more predators within a few taps of a screen or a few strokes of a keyboard on a computer looking to harm your children than there are driving around your community looking specifically to target your child. The biggest threat is online.
It's changed everything. I had Dr. Lisa on last week, and she was focused on internet safety for kids, and was just talking about how the games and the websites and all those, and you've kind of seen this firsthand in some of your law enforcement interactions when you've dealt with some of these criminals and put them away and found them yourselves. I think that's couldn't be emphasized and re-emphasized enough, because so many times we use the internet and streaming and everything as babysitters,
Mm-hmm.
and it's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, like I said, we get focused on the wrong things. We react in the wrong way. We react in ways that often aren't helpful at the end of the day. And again, even though the biggest threat is online, again, that's not discounting the fact that there aren't people, whether they are family friends, maybe they are relatives, they could be school teachers, they could be faith-based leaders that still aren't out there looking to exploit others for their own gratification. So those types of things do exist. I'm not discounting that. But that's another reason that parents have to be so attentive, to who their kids are talking to and spending time with.
Well, one of the things, and you've agreed to share a story you shared a month ago, and I want everybody to hear that. But when we talk about the criminals, in my mind, and I may be wrong here, Doug, so correct me, but there's the organized crime aspect that is realize that I can monetize this
Hmm.
business of exploitation. And then there's the consumers, the ones who are doing the exploiting, or at least participating in creating the way it's being monetized. Can you talk about the organized crime behind this? Like, what does that look like, from your lens?
Well, in particular, human trafficking is it's a financially motivated crime. For those who are facilitating human trafficking, it is a financially motivated crime. The buyers, they're looking for sexual gratification. But the facilitators, the people who are behind it, that are actually trafficking, um, girls, boys, young women, whatever the case might be, um, for them, it's all financial. And so whether it is, traditional organized crime, transnational criminal organizations, um, it's trafficking has been a popular way to make money for gang related activity, whether it's TDA, or even local gangs, because they can make so much money. It's so profitable. There's so little overhead, and there's so little risk compared to other crime.
TDA, just to clear, is Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang, correct?
Right, correct. Um, and if you're selling drugs, once your supply of drugs is gone, it's gone. You have to the user has to go buy more. The seller has to re-up. And every time you do that, there's a risk. There's a big risk. Are you going to get ripped off by eh, are you going to get ripped off by somebody? Or are you going to get ripped off by a rival gang? Is the person you're buying from actually an undercover officer, undercover agent that's about to bring down your organization? And the penalties, have traditionally been, so severe for drug trafficking and that kind of thing. Seizure laws, all of that. It's just there's a lot of risk that goes into that. And traditionally with trafficking, it's been a lower risk crime with a high reward, which is important for business when you're looking at, what's our ROI on this. Um, they're looking at that risk to reward ratio. And if you're selling somebody, or you're selling even an image, you can do that multiple times. A trafficker can sell a girl, for instance, 10, 15 times a day if they want to, and do that 7 days a week. It's a renewable resource. And if one of those girls gets worn out or gets sick or whatever happens, they just go get another one.
Yeah.
There's an endless supply.
Is from the criminal the crime behind it, it's an international problem. International, you talked about international kind of crime syndicates and such, but it is happening in the United States and it's happening in North America, right? I think
Absolutely. The US is the world's largest consumer of commercial sex. So
that's
yeah,
online and in
it's
person.
happening. It's happening online. It's happening everywhere, and it's not. And again, it's not just like how people view it because of stereotypes that we've learned through the media. Um, but for instance, when it comes to kids, I mean, we estimate that about 50% of children who are trafficked are being trafficked out of their own home. They're victims of familial trafficking. So it's a family member. It's a mother, a father, a brother, sister, grandparent, aunt, uncle, or a close family-like relationship that is engaged in exploiting that person. And those are the cases that we often never hear about until the victims are, well into their 20s. Um, and so it's happening everywhere.
Can I ask on from the law enforcement side? I had a chance of visiting DHS's what is it, C3 center there, and how does somebody in law enforcement that has to deal with these horrific crimes, and how do you keep yourself in a place of, I don't know, peace? Like, how hard is it as a law enforcement agent that deals with the tough and the hardest subjects from a human perspective, to stay positive and to see the good in the world versus just all the crime?
Oh, that's a deep question. Um, and to be honest, I failed miserably at that. And um, it really impacted me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You do the best you can. I mean, I think now that we're recognizing that the severity of secondary or vicarious trauma from working these crimes. I know DHS in particular, we have programs now specifically that are mandated for agents who work these types of crimes that they have to participate in to ensure that they're getting the proper care um, and the help that they need. Um, and they've done a lot of investment in that area. But um, you know, we've never been promised a perfect world. Um, and I think it's easy. It's easy to question good. It's easy to question the ultimate good um, in all of this. Um, but we have to recognize the fact that we live in a broken world, and these kinds of things are going to exist. Um, and if it wasn't for the efforts of those who were willing to step into a place where they can investigate these crimes and put perpetrators away and help victims, then this problem would be far worse than it is.
God bless you, my friend. And as I've gotten to know other existing and former law enforcement agents that had to deal with this and just horrific things, my respect for those men and women that do this for a living is done nothing but has grown and amplified. So thank you for not only the career as you've left the agency or you've left law enforcement, but you're now continuing to inspire people with stories. Thank you. And I hope and pray that you are inspired yourself as you kind of awaken many amazing groups on how important it is to be involved in this fight. Doug, what I'd like is, if it's okay and you're okay with it, you had an event that happened, I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe now, maybe we can talk about that. I think that's really important for us to know, kind of, I don't know how much you're allowed to share or you can share. So, obviously you do whatever you can. And then leaving with, what are things we can do as guardians, parents, to kind of protect our homes. But maybe we just start with that story if you're okay with that.
Yeah. So Yeah, it's been a couple of months ago, about 3 months ago now, I guess. Um, I got on a plane. I was in an airport, won't say where, but I recognized an individual in that airport, um, and got on the plane. And it just so happens that this individual sat right next to me on the flight. And this person, pretty, pretty prominent figure, um, and in business, in faith, in faith-based movements, faith-based nonprofits, that kind of thing. And we exchanged pleasantries, very briefly. And I sat there kind of doing my thing. I was doing a crossword puzzle on my phone. But I noticed something unusual. He had pulled one of the cards out of the seat back in front of us. The the card that shows you, how to get off the plane in case of an emergency. These are the drinks that we serve. These are our food options, that kind of stuff. And he was holding that card in such a way. He was sitting in the aisle. I was sitting next to the window. He was holding the card in such a way that anybody walking down the aisle as the plane was getting ready to take off, or the plane was boarding, nobody could see what he was looking at. And I thought, well, that's unusual. But after 35 years, I'm still pretty inquisitive. And I thought that was odd. So I look over and I see this guy on his phone, and he's searching for young girls to buy in Dallas, Texas, to buy for sex. I'm shocked. And at the same time, I'm thinking, why in the world did this guy have to pick to sit next to me? And what am I going to do? And he was so engrossed in what he was doing, searching for young girls to buy, that we took off. We were in the air, and suddenly his phone stopped working because there was no more cell phone signal. And he looks at me and he said, my phone won't work. He said, I lost signal. And I said, we took off. He had no idea. He was so engrossed in what he was doing. He was completely oblivious to the fact that we were now cruising, at about 10,000 feet and going up. And he's like, I got to get online. And he's trying to figure out how to get online. And finally he looks at me and he's like, do you know how to get online? And I said, yeah, I can help you. So he hands me his phone, which was a huge mistake. Because now I'm able to see everything. Like I've just identified this guy. I've got his phone number. I know what he's doing, and I've got all of that now. I get him online, and he goes right back to looking for young girls to buy. And we begin having a conversation, not about that, but we just begin having a general conversation. And he begins telling me, about his work, about his ministry work, about his faith-based work. And my blood just started to boil. And I think I shared with you, there was that scene. I think it was an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I think it might have been the movie Commando, when Arnold Schwarzenegger gets on the plane and the bad guy's sitting next to him. And Arnold takes him out on the plane and then tells the flight attendant, don't bother my friend. He's dead tired. That was what was going through my mind. That's what I wanted to do at that moment. And, he's having this very intense, spiritual conversation with me, about his work. But the whole time, all I can think about is the fact that he's traveling to Dallas, Texas. And then the next day he's going, I believe it was to Houston. And he's now looking for young girls to buy, not just in Dallas, but also in Houston. And ultimately, we got off to make a long story short, we got off the plane. I waited for him because I thought I've got to do something, and I confronted him in the airport. He asked me what I did for a living. I told him I was just a consultant. And I told him, I said, oh, I kind of lied. to you. I need to be honest. I said, I've actually just spent the last 35 years putting people just like you in jail. And his eyes got really big. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, I saw what you were doing. He's like, what do you mean? I said, you gave me your phone. I know what you were doing. Like, I saw you were looking for young girls to buy. And he tried to rationalize it by saying, oh, well, I've never actually done that before. Somebody just told me about this. And I'm like, no, you're lying. I said, you have those sites bookmarked on your phone. I said, you were looking at sites that I didn't even know existed after 35 years. So I said, you're like a pro user. And, I had to go into this whole dialogue with him about what he was doing and why it was wrong. And that, he wasn't buying sex from young girls. He was raping young girls. And ultimately, and I told him, I said, state of Texas, this is a felony. I said, you're about to lose everything um, by what you're doing. And I said, and if you're buying a young girl in Texas, if you're buying someone who's underage, I said, you're looking at a life sentence. And I said, you don't have that many more years to go, because this guy he was in his 70s, early 70s. Ultimately, he said, well, thank you. And he turned and left, and I'm hoping that intervention maybe stop from some girls, from getting exploited in Dallas and in Houston over the next couple of days. Hopefully it changed his life forever. I don't know. But again, it goes back to the fact that you can never be too careful, because there are predators everywhere.
Well, brother, thank you for sharing that story. I know reliving that is not fun, and I think you made the exact point: is we have to, as guardians and parents, even the people we think we can trust the most, we need to care for them. And then I just think your story also talks about. I know you, and you've traveled. Last year, you were all over the place. You had to have been exhausted, and I think you said, "Why of all people, he needs to sit next to me?" I mean, it's like you're an exploitation fighter at your core, and yet at that same moment, you had to make a decision to um, stand up, and maybe less courage, but more just take action. And I just want to thank you, because that's what we all need to do in our own spheres, in our own ability, in our own right. And part of it is just taking action of just putting parental controls on devices that our kids are using, and having confrontation maybe in our home, just to with our teenage kids. Maybe they don't understand, but you did that on a huge level. I just again thank you. I'm sorry that you had to do that, even after you've left law enforcement, but thank you for doing that. Now, how do we go from that, where we could be surrounded by predators, criminals? How do we, one, not live in fear of that, but two, how do we start making decisions in our homes as parents, as grandparents? What can we do?
Yeah, I think the first thing that parents need to do is they just need to raise healthy kids. They need to have a healthy home. Um, that might look different for different people. You certainly don't have to be a perfect parent. None of us were perfect parents, right? But try and have a home where the kids know, number one, that they're loved, they're valued, that you spend time together as a family, you do things together as a family, and you remove perhaps that biggest vulnerability that's out there, right? Um, from because I'm just so many of the children that end up abused, not all of them, but so many that are exploited, come from broken familial relationships. And it's a huge vulnerability. So if we can create an environment where they feel safe, they feel secure, we can at least mitigate that vulnerability. Um, and then I think as parents, you have to be parents. You're not your child's best friend. Um, and you need to be a parent. And if that means putting parental controls on their digital devices, if that means waiting until your children are 16 to get a phone, if that means routinely checking search history, social media, knowing who their friends are, who they're hanging out with, who they're talking to online, what games they're playing. All of those things are part of being a parent, because our number one job as a parent is to protect our kids. And it's not for our child to be their best friend. It's to protect them. And so we have to be willing to do that. And it might not be popular, but they'll get over it. And they'll recognize later on, I think the value in that decision. And I think too, as parents, we just need to be educated. And you and I both know there are a lot of resources out there to educate parents, as to the risks, and what they can do, how they can best do it, how they can best control what their kids are viewing, seeing, how they're communicating online, that kind of thing. Just get educated. Know what the risks are. And then if you know what the risks are, you can properly respond. And then at the same time, if you know what the risks are and you don't, it's on you as the parent.
Well said. Yeah, parenting is tough, but the void of being a parent and not stepping up to be a parent is one of the worst things that I think we can do, is bringing children into this world. And I think you said it perfectly. I can't say thank you enough, brother, for spending time with our little show here, and in kind of lifting the veil on maybe some of the things that, as a law enforcement officer for as long and a wonderful human being, that you are still confronted with. Thank you for what you're doing, and may God bless your travels, safe travels. And when you come home, good luck at your keynote. And I know you're going to inspire an amazing group, and you're going to continue to inspire 2026. We need your voice out there more than ever. So thank you for your past, and thank you for what you're doing into the future, my friend, and spending time with us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
If you enjoyed the M3 show and you want to watch all the new releases, click subscribe. You know how it works. Secondly, if you want to support my nonprofit, the one I established to fight human crimes like child exploitation and human trafficking and scams, click the QR code, scan it, make a donation. That would be hugely appreciated. And if you want to stay updated on all the music, again, I release music regularly. Go and click that link in the description, and we're on every major platform: Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. You can look up Ian Mitchell. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the support, and I look forward to being with you next time.
We've got to protect our children.